I've been asked, where is Knowledge Anywhere looking to go as it relates to virtual reality training? So this brief presentation, it's approximately 20 minutes long, will give you some idea, at least our current thinking, the direction of the industry, and where virtual reality training is going. First of all, what is virtual reality training? So we've coined the word VRT. So we've had instructor-led training, ILT, web-based training, WBT, and now there's VRT. And truly it is the use of computer-generated 3D simulation to be able to immerse a learner in a realistic environment. The thing that we're focused on also, the VRT event is launched and managed as an additional training environment within the learning management system, looking to make sure we don't reproduce the mistake that we did 15 years ago, where all of a sudden folks were doing webinars one place, instructor-led another place, and then online learning was launched someplace else and it wasn't aggregated. It took years to get it aggregated in a blended format. So we have a great opportunity to make sure VRT is just not a one-off learning event, but it's part of the overall blended environment. A little background is sort of the evolution of corporate learning. You look at pre-1990s, everything was in person. You'd fly everybody to a centralized location or have an instructor go out to a location and so on. Of course, there was self-study being binders. They were shipped out, job aids. Of course, peer-to-peer, which is still probably one of the most effective ways of transferring knowledge, was a prominent way pre-1990s of exchanging knowledge within the corporate world. In the 1990s, sort of what we call web-based training 1.0, so you began to have sort of online learning for very basic elements, whether it's how to use a procedure, those type things. They weren't all that interactive, and it was launched out there. It was very much a directed learning, so go take this course on compliance. You took the course on compliance, it was marked complete. Also in the 1990s was the explosion of webinars. In-person training was still used, self-study was still used, job aids was still used, and of course peer-to-peer training was still used and is still used. So in the 1990s, the beginning of using web-based training to complement in-person training. So you go from 2000 to 2017, and so web-based training has evolved. Everybody, for the most part, that's in a leading position is using online learning as part of their overall arsenal to help train and educate their customers, their employees, and distributors. Thanks to YouTube, is truly the proliferation of video. Video has become effective. It's become higher quality, easy to produce. Probably YouTube is the biggest instructor of all kinds of things out there, but you're really the proliferation of video as a quality instructional element out there. The community of learning, so you can go out and become a part of a community to learn something, whether it be something in the academia world or something in the professional world or even something from a hobby perspective. Academia embraced online learning, and this truly bleeds over to the corporate environment. So every student coming out of college, actually even high school now, when you say they took a class, you don't know if that class was in person, if it was online, it was a blended, and that really goes into the corporate world. So it truly, that blended environment matured substantially, especially in the last few years. Where we see 2017 to 2019 is virtual reality learning or virtual reality training will start taking hold, but it will be 1.0. It will be like web-based training 1.0 was 15 years ago. Blended learning will evolve into the next element where there truly will be a blending of learning from in-person to peer-to-peer to communities to instructor-led to virtual reality training. It will not be just spokes, it will get blended together. We're already seeing virtual role play, the idea of being able to do virtual role plays of somebody submitting an exercise, a mentor coming in and grading that exercise. Wonderful for doing professional development around things that are high touch out there. Still, it's been self-directed learning. Of course, everything now is available on mobile devices out there. So looking ahead on this evolution, sort of 2020, virtual reality training 2.0, which will be truly immersive. Augmented reality will be there. There'll potentially be the lifetime learning record. It will be blended learning 3.0, taking all these elements of instruction and making it a rich environment for the corporate learner. Needless to say, as we're dealing with corporations every day, there are still corporations that are do most everything in person, have self-study, have some job aids, maybe have some compliance courses online, but have not adopted this immersive, web-based training in a blended format and so on. They're moving in that direction. So needless to say, for somebody that's just doing web-based training for compliance, doing most everything instructor-led, going all the way to virtual reality training will be a little bit of a leap, but it's all part of a evolution out there. First of all, this virtual simulation isn't anything new. You look at flight simulation. The Air Force, created in 1966, and since then, flight simulation has been used for training by almost all the major airlines. Around flight simulation, needless to say, you do not want somebody learning how to fly a jet, in real time, real person. So needless to say, for a high risk environment, it wasn't even possible to do those types of things without a simulated environment. You look at the military training. Military has been using virtual simulations for various things, whether it be paratroopers using virtual simulations on what it looks like to enter into an enemy territory, what it might look like in a firefight, what it might look like to launch something from a aircraft carrier and so on. But these are all simulations for high risk, life and death things that you could not do in person. Very appropriate use of the technology. However, these are $1 million type solutions. The thing that we're very excited about is virtual reality coming to the point for both consumer use, thus coming to the point for easy to use within the corporate environment for training employees, customers, distributors, and so on. So you look at the VR trends, and there's some great articles out there about what's happening in the VR world, and truly there's a great article by Deloitte saying the $1 billion niche market in 2016. So we're really at the beginning of this market. So you look at VR app developers are experimenting with all kinds of things to provide feedback for touch, potentially smell, looking to transform social activities of how people watch sports, participate in medias, go on trips. Of course, having things accessible from the smartphone. All the major gaming players, you look at the Oculus Rift and the PlayStation, will be major players in redefining how gaming. I say that gaming will have the thing that will drive what happens in the corporate world, because the money that will go into the gaming environment to allow a true immersive, rich, virtual reality world. And then the VR world is already expected to reach 90 million folks this year. So this is really evolving quickly, especially when you have Google HoloLens is one of the leaders in the virtual reality, immersive, applying the technology to various situations. But you have Google with Google Cardboard and all the money that they're investing into it. You have Intel investing in it, along with folks in the gaming world. So anytime you have a Microsoft, a Google, an Intel, and the major gaming players participating in this technology will take off and will become mainstream, and it's very exciting for the folks in the corporate world to see how they could use this technology to impact their business. And you think about the evolution. I mean, you look at these headsets and goggles and the Google Cardboard, and someday we're going to look back at it and think about the old cell phone days back in this. This is a picture of Martin Cooper, who is considered the father of the cell phone, holding a cell phone back in the mid 70s. It will look like that. However, this was 10 years ago with Steve Jobs holding the first iPhone, and that was a decade ago. The same evolution will happen with VR, that someday we'll look back at these headsets and it will seem like that old cell phone thing. But this is all part of the evolution. So the way we look at virtual reality training 1.0, as you look at web-based training 1.0, 15 years ago, but this is where we are now. It provides a 360-degree environment. So when we develop a VRT, it allows me to, for example, walk into a room, look around, explore various aspects of it, go take a knowledge, go explore something from deeper knowledge and so on. Right now it's non-tactile, the way that we're describing it, so I can't yet go pick up something out there. It's available from the learning management system, so you can launch it from the learning management system, and it has embedded knowledge points. I'll bring some examples of those up later. So when I work into the virtual environment, let's say I get to an instrument and I want to see what's happening with that instrument, and I can actually go and look at it, and a video might pop up and to let me go explore it deeper. But it is truly, the neat thing about the VRT, it is truly as if I'm in that room exploring that environment and out there. And again, I'll share some examples along the way. Then you look at VRT 2.0, and this is probably 2 or 3 years ago. So, 2 or 3 years from now. This technology exists today, but the computing power it takes is relatively high. It's expensive, both in hardware, it's expensive to develop for it, but it will continually come down. It will be fully immersive, so I will be able to pick up something, move something, adjust something. It will be interwoven with augmented reality. The VRT experience will be tracked. So not only can I launch it from the learning management system, but it actually tracks my experience all the way through to see how I did. And then also it has integrated assessments into it. So this is where we see VRT as 2.0. You look at, folks say, well, how would you use this VRT? We have web-based training today. What's going to be better about it down the road? So there's two things. Today, if you want a sales rep, let's say for example, to experience a retail environment, either you have to have a mock environment set up to share with him or her to see that environment, what it looks like, take a walk around, or you have to go to a real environment to do it. So either way, it requires some type of physical environment. So the ability to truly, putting on your VRT goggles or glasses, and being able to instantaneously put them in that world with the sound, be able for them to explore, be able for them to hear what's going on as if their sales manager or their mentor was walking the halls, the aisles of that retail environment there. The other thing is, in many cases, it's not possible to move a piece of equipment to the learner, or for the learner to go to the piece of equipment easily. Either it's possible, but it's really expensive, and it's not practical, and they can't do it enough times. So it's one of two things: either immersing a learner in an environment so they can experience that environment and learn from it real time, or taking a big piece of equipment or something like that and getting it close to the learner. Those are the two things that we see. Folks have played with the idea of doing spreadsheets in our VRT environment, and that seems interesting. I just don't see the impact of it out there. So just imagine the possibilities. So I'll start with this lower one, sort of the mechanical training and repair. So you think about all the wind turbines popping up across the world as an alternative energy source out there. However, all these wind turbines need to have training on how to repair them. And if you've noticed, those wind turbines are at least 200 feet off the ground. When they train those folks, they don't train them at 200 feet off the ground initially. They have to have them at ground level. They can walk into where the transport gears are and so on. However, at some point, it would be extremely powerful for them to virtually be able to go up the tower, see from a safety perspective what it's like to be 200 or 250 feet off the ground, what it sounds like to be that far off the ground, and then being able, from a safety perspective, go into the environments. It's that environment the size of part of a bus out there, so it's not an extremely small environment, but go into the environment and see both from a procedural perspective, from a safety perspective, what it's like to repair something that's 200 feet off the ground that is relatively dangerous, but it's really important to have the skills out there. You go to the next one, you think about the training that goes on from like confined spaces. So our utility folks that have to go underground in confined spaces, there's all kinds of dangers, from either air quality, things falling, things being stepped off of ladders that aren't there, and so on. So right now, that training has to happen, first of all, on non-confined area with some type of pictures. Then you go into a confined area that is controlled to show them, and then over time they're there with a mentor from a safety perspective, go into a confined area, and then longer term they go into a confined area by themselves following the appropriate safety procedures. But the idea of being able to put them in that confined area, right now with the virtual reality training, we can't control, they can't sense the air quality yet. However, they will be able to get into that confined area, look around, see what the safety issues are, being able to explore it with both audio or video or somebody talking as they go through it. But it is 90% as if they are in that confined space. The next one over that I talked about is, you think about sales training. So let's say a sales rep that sells some type of printers. They need to walk into an office environment and look around to see where people are positioned from their computing, where their printers are, and so on. This has all happened historically via, you see, a sales manager traveling with a sales rep, and they need to observe those things. The neat thing about the virtual reality is you can put them in 5 different scenarios within an hour. And so, okay, here's a scenario. What do you see? They should be able to point out that there's a competitor printer there. There's no printer there. It's not a network printer. There's printers on everybody's desk. Whatever it might be. So the idea of evolving to the point that you can do virtual training with field sales reps and being able to assess, did they get it, with deeper knowledge points. Take an assessment afterwards. That's why, from the blended perspective, the idea of being able to have them participate in a virtual reality event and then have them go take an assessment would be key. So the true blending would be, they would learn about it in a potentially static environment, go in an immersive environment, and then come back to the assessment. The reason I'm giving these examples out there is, as our customers begin to build these VRT events, they know this is going to give them a competitive advantage. They gain that competitive advantage along the way as they were brave enough, 10 or 15 years ago to start adopting web-based training. They have blended training, they have communities, and so on. It's driving their business. They see VRT as the next evolution, on there. However, they do know that, we appreciate their confidentiality of not exposing the details around their VRTs that we're building for them. You think about hospitality and retail. This is what the retail environment needs to look like, and so they can actually see that retail environment along the way. And so with that, instead of either looking at it from a binder and having diagrams of where where point of purchase material is supposed to go, where display is supposed to go, they actually can see exactly what the holiday displays are supposed to look like out there. Or even like a restaurant, so a server that he or she needs to be able to tell, what the daily tasks are from keeping an area clean. A cook around what an environment should look like from both a safety perspective, a preparation perspective, a food identification perspective, and so on. So you can just imagine the possibilities, and I won't go through all these. There's things in manufacturing. You can imagine in healthcare, training a nurse on what a sterile shield should look like and how to set up a sterile shield, within a surgical environment, which right now is usually done both textbook, mentor, and some practice, or somebody that needs to be trained on a new infusion pump. So instead of having the infusion pump there or flying in them through an infusion pump or having still pictures, they actually can hear the pump. They can virtually explore how the pump is going to work, how it's going to interact with the patient. So we're truly excited about the possibilities for our customers of extending what they've been doing from an education perspective out there. And truly, much like web-based training was 15 years ago, the possibilities are endless. It does take a brave soul to jump into VRT because it's new. But the customers that adopted web-based training early on, they had some bumps along the way, but in most of these folks is they created such a differentiator from their competitors that it's almost impossible for their competitors to compete with them from a rich educational platform. So we're excited along the way, and I look forward to your feedback on what you think out there. If you have any questions, feel free just to contact me. I'll have my Google glasses on when you call.